So now that we've learned some of the basic features in Fusion 360, I wanted to try to drive home the idea that you can build pretty much anything you want in this software. And to drive home that point, we're going to try to build Thor's hammer. And so let's start a new design. And let's go to New Sketch. And let's click on our front plane and grab our rectangle tool. Make it coincident with your origin, click and drag. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I want this rectangle to be pretty big. I want the height over there on the left to be a little bit bigger than 6 inches, and I want the width to be a little bit bigger than 12 inches. And right now it's asking me for the height. If I hit the tab key, it's asking me for the width. You can tab back and forth with your tab key on your keyboard. For the height, I'm going to tell it to be 8 inches and hit tab. And for the width, I'm going to tell it to be 15 inches and hit enter. And you can always use your dimension tool and add your dimensions after the fact. But I'm going to finish my sketch, hit my home button, and hit the extrude button. And I want to extrude this rectangle 8 inches and hit enter. And so now we have this sort of boxed outline of Thor's hammer. But if you notice, Thor's hammer actually has these little slants on the corners here. And those slants are called chamfers. And so we can go over here to modify and click on the drop down arrow and find our chamfer tool. And what chamfer does is it takes a sharp edge and it sort of flattens it. It makes it a slanted edge instead. And so I want to add it to these 4 edges. So this top and bottom one, this top one on this side, and I want to go over to the other side and get this bottom one as well. I want to select these 4 edges and I want to give them a chamfer distance of 1 inch. And hit OK. And so you can see where these slants come from. They're called chamfers. But if you notice, there are actually more chamfers on the other corners. And they're a little bit bigger. And it's a mirror image. It's on both sides. And so if I grab my chamfer tool again, I can click on these other 8 edges. And so 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can go to the back. 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you notice, it says I have all 8 of those corners selected. And I want to give it a distance of 1.5 inches because it's just a little bit bigger here than it is here. Hit OK. And so now we have this outline of Thor's hammer. The only thing we really need to add is these top circles and then the handles on the other end. And so let me hit the home button. And I want to start with the handle and I want to add it to this top face. And so I'm going to go to Create Sketch and click on this top face. And I'm going to grab my circle tool. I'm going to put it down really anywhere in the middle here, click and drag, and I'm going to tell it to be 1.2 inches in diameter. And then I want to center this circle. And so I'm going to find my dimension tool, and I'm going to click on the center of my circle, and I want to go to the outside edge. I don't want to go to this edge right here. I actually want to go to this outermost edge. Click, and then click again, and I'm going to tell it to be a distance of 4 inches, and hit enter. And so why did I want to go to this edge and not this one? Well, if I go to my home view, you can kind of see it. This line only exists because we added this chamfer. This was the actual edge of the hammer itself, and the entire depth was 8 inches. And so we could have measured from this line, but if we had, we would have had to do a little bit extra math because we would have had to take into account that extra 1.5 inch chamfer, and so it just saved us a little bit of math to just measure to the outer edge. And so we make sure we have our dimension tool selected. We can do the exact same thing. Once again, don't grab to this edge, but grab to the outermost edge. And if you recall, from end to end, the width of this hammer was 15 inches. And so I'm going to click and put that down. And if you don't know what half of 15 inches is, that's fine. You can just type in 15 divided by 2, and Fusion will actually do that math for you. If you hit enter, it turns out half of 15 is 7.5. I'm going to hit the home button. Now that I have a fully constrained sketch, I'm going to finish it and extrude this circle. And look how long it is, maybe 12 inches. And hit enter. And hit my home button. And there we go. Now it's really starting to look like Thor's hammer. But we still need to add these rings on the other end. And so let's go to the bottom. Let's right click on this face and find Create Sketch. And instead of grabbing my circle tool and centering this circle, I'm going to show you a new trick in Fusion. And so I'm actually going to, while I'm still in this sketch on my bottom view, hit my home button. And I want to be able to see the top of my handle, which I've already centered, if you recall. And I'm going to go over here to Create, and I'm going to find Project and Include. I want to select Project. And then I'm going to click on the top of my handle. And what this does is it projects that circle onto the plane that we're sketching on. This only works if you're in a sketch, but you'll see I now have a centered circle on my bottom view that is the exact same size and location of the circle that we drew for the handle previously. And so now I'm going to use that. I'm going to grab my circle tool and I'm going to tell it to have the exact same center as my previous circle so I know it'll be centered. And I'm going to drag it out and I'm going to give this a diameter of 4.5 inches. And so it's very convenient because I don't have to now use my dimension tool to recenter the circle. I'm using the dimensions of this previous circle that I projected forward. And I'm going to finish my sketch, change my view so I can see what's going on. And I want to extrude this circle out. And it's very important that you don't just click on the outer ring, but the inner ring as well. You want to get the entire circle selected. And I'm going to tell it to be 1.25 inches. And maybe that's a little bit too far. Let's look back at it. It looks like it's pretty small. So maybe we do 0.15 inches instead. We can play with it if we want. And that looks a lot better. I'm going to hit OK. And that actually looks pretty good. And if we look, there's one more smaller circle extruding out of that. And so we can start a new sketch on this face. And again, I want to project this circle. And so I'm going to go to Create, Project Include, and select Project. Or I could just hit P on my keyboard if you look. I'm going to select this circle and hit OK. And so now that circle is projected, which means I can use it in this sketch. And I'm going to draw one more circle. And I want it to have the exact same center as the previous circle. So again, I don't have to add any location dimensions. And I'm going to tell this circle to be 4 inches in diameter. Hit Finish Sketch. And then Extrude. And I want to make sure I don't accidentally click this outer circle. You can click the outer circle, then that would come out. I don't want it to come out like that. I'm going to hit Cancel and try again. Hit Extrude. I want to make sure I hit this center circle. And I'm going to tell it to come out the same distance as before, and if I'm not mistaken, that was 0.15 inches. Hit OK. And with that, we have Thors hammer. I'm going to go to Save and call this Thors hammer. And if you want, you can play with it and decorate it and make it a little bit more like Thors hammer, add some designs and add some features to it. But only if you want to. I'm going to say we are done with this shape.